Welcome to Beyond the Breath. I'm your host, Heather Hester, and I am so glad that you are here today. So, before I get into today's topic, I want to encourage you to participate in Hands Off Day tomorrow, Saturday, April 5th. Donald Trump and Elon Musk think that this country belongs to them. They're taking and destroying everything they can get their hands on, and they are daring each one of us and the world to stop them. Tomorrow, we're taking to the streets to fight back with a clear message: hands off. There are events planned in all 50 states, in cities and towns, big and small. Go to handsoff2025.com to learn more. There is a link in the show notes as well as in my link tree where you can also learn more. So go check it out. Go check out what events are planned near you and get out there. As John Lewis said, and Cory Booker continued earlier this week, let's get into some good trouble. So today's episode is the first in a series talking about freedom of speech. Today, we're specifically going to talk about freedom of the press and the importance of the Fourth Estate. The First Amendment ranks right up there as one of the things that many of us learned eons ago, that events of the past few years have required, or at least inspired us to clear the cobwebs from that corner of our brain to remember, or perhaps even relearn the importance of. I know that I'm not alone in saying that I took for granted these rights and these freedoms afforded all of us by the Constitution. And now, as they are being violated or removed at an alarming rate, I wanted to do my part in waking and shaking us to the reality of what is happening. Democracy and all of the pieces that are so unique to our country, the United States, and our Constitution is not a given. Let me say that again. Democracy is not a given. This horrific administration and all those within are a flashing neon sign of what happens when we take all of our freedoms for granted, when we forget why we have them or what they stand for, or that we, the people, means all people, all Americans. It is not too late to say stop, to be heard, to open your eyes, and then help open the eyes of others. Since the sheer volume and breadth of the ways these idiots are trying to steal our country is so enormous, we need to pick one area in which to start. I want you to think about everything you've heard in just the past 24 hours. Now, hone in on one that really resonates. That's where your focus is going to be. Okay, so now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of why freedom of the press is central to so much of what is happening and why we're starting here. I want you to take a minute to think about a time that a newspaper article or a story in the evening news caught your attention or had a role in shaping your perspective on something. Was it because it challenged an existing belief of yours? Or did it introduce new information or share wisdom or knowledge? Was it the style of writing or the reporting that made an impression on you? Was it the recognition of a broader worldview? Whatever it was, my guess is that it encouraged you to continue to seek information, wisdom, and even answers through journalism. What a privilege it is, or was, to have access to different opinions, to be able to trust in the integrity and truth of journalism. This privilege and naivete did not recognize the gaping hole that trust left open for corruption, lying, greed, and ultimately destruction. So, before I get too ahead of myself, I want to take a look at some historical context of the First Amendment and its roots in democratic principles. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution states, quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. End quote. This is rooted in Enlightenment ideas of individual liberty and government accountability. The First Amendment was designed to protect citizens from government overreach and ensure a free flow of information and ideas. Take a moment and think about how novel of an idea that was at that time. The founding fathers, particularly James Madison, recognized that a free press was essential for democracy, allowing the public to hold leaders accountable and fostering an informed electorate. Just think about that. Think how cool that is now and how amazing that was then. Throughout American history, freedom of speech and the press have been tested and reaffirmed in times of war, political upheaval, and social change. There have been many important cases, but I'm just going to outline a few right now that have shaped and cemented the importance of freedom of the press. The first is the New York Times versus the United States in 1971, which is also known as the Pentagon Papers case. This landmark decision reinforced the principle that prior restraint, government censorship before publication, is unconstitutional in most cases. The Supreme Court ruled that the Nixon administration could not prevent the New York Times and Washington Post from publishing classified documents about the Vietnam War, solidifying the press's role in exposing government misconduct. The second case is Schenck versus the United States in 1919. This case introduced the clear and present danger test, which allowed the government to restrict speech during wartime if it posed a significant threat. Although later refined, this case highlighted the complexities of balancing free speech with national security. The third case is Hustler Magazine versus Falwell in 1988. This ruling reinforced that public figures cannot sue for emotional distress over parodies or satirical content, emphasizing the importance of free expression and criticism and humor. And finally, the fourth case is the New York Times versus Sullivan, 1964. This case set the actual malice standard for defamation lawsuits involving public officials, protecting the press from frivolous libel claims and ensuring robust reporting on government affairs. So I thought it would be interesting just to quickly take a look at how free speech and free press specifically differ around the world. Currently in the United States, the First Amendment offers broad protections, allowing even controversial or offensive speech unless it incites imminent lawless action. And that's important to remember because that's something that we are going to circle back to in the next Beyond the Breath pod when we talk more specifically about freedom of speech. In the European Union, the EU, many countries have stricter regulations on hate speech, with laws against Holocaust denial, hate speech, and incitement to violence. For example, Germany's Network Enforcement Act requires social media platforms to remove illegal hate speech within 24 hours. In China and Russia, state-controlled media and heavy censorship limit press freedom, with laws against dissent and restrictions on independent journalism. In the Scandinavian countries, they are frequently ranked as having the highest press freedom, with strong protections for investigative journalism and government transparency. And then it is no surprise that in many developing countries, developing nations, they struggle with press freedom due to government control, threats to journalists, and just lack of legal protections. So while the First Amendment protects most forms of speech, the digital age has amplified the spread of misinformation at an unprecedented rate. False information about elections, public health, climate change, just to name a few, can spread rapidly online, influencing public opinion and endangering lives. Social media platforms have become major players in moderating content, raising questions about who decides what constitutes misinformation and how to enforce accountability without infringing on free speech. The challenge lies in distinguishing between harmful misinformation, such as deliberate disinformation campaigns, and protected speech that might simply be unpopular or controversial. Policymakers, journalists, educators, and tech companies are really just grappling with how to combat false narratives while upholding democratic values. Some countries have implemented laws to punish misinformation, but these laws can be abused to silence dissent or suppress legitimate criticism. For now, it seems that media literacy education is a key strategy to empower us to critically evaluate sources, verify facts, and resist manipulation, encouraging open dialogue and fact-checking rather than censorship may provide or may be one of the healthier paths forward. Since this is something we can do, I want to give you 3 actionable tools. The first is to use your critical thinking skills. You may need to dust them off a little bit and practice a little bit, but you don't need to overcomplicate it. Simply ask why as you peel away the layers of information, misinformation, and disinformation. The second and the third are both online sources that I will link in the show notes. Media Literacy Now offers an extensive online library featuring advocacy tools, lesson plans, and activities designed to support media literacy education across various settings. And then the other one I really like is PEN America's Media Literacy Toolkit. It's called Knowing the News, and it offers media literacy training to equip the public, all of us, with skills to identify and prevent the spread of false and misleading information. So I will link those in the show notes, and I highly recommend that you go and check those out. Okay, so let's get into the press as the fourth estate. Why is it called this, and why is it important? The term fourth estate refers to the press and news media, both in their traditional print form and digital iterations, as a societal or political force or institution whose influence is not officially recognized as a branch of government. So there are the three branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. And then the press is the unofficial fourth estate. Historically, this term emerged in the 18th century, and it really gained a lot of popularity during the Enlightenment when it was recognized that the press played a crucial role in shaping public opinion, advocating for accountability, and protecting democracy. The press serves as a watchdog, holding the powerful to account, exposing corruption, and providing the public with the information necessary to make informed decisions. In a democratic society, a free and independent press is essential to ensuring transparency and preventing abuses of power. It complements the legislative, executive, and judicial branches by fostering a culture of scrutiny and public discourse. The significance of the Fourth Estate lies not only in its ability to inform, but also in its responsibility to challenge authority, question policies, and amplify diverse voices in society, especially those that are often marginalized or silenced. The press is also a check on government power. Journalism has long served as a counterbalance to authority, revealing injustices, corruption, and abuse of power. Investigative reporting has brought to light everything from political scandals, for example, Watergate, to financial fraud, environmental crises, and human rights abuses. In the US, the First Amendment protects the press's right to scrutinize government actions without fear of retribution. This protection ensures that the government remains accountable to the people it serves. Globally, press freedom is often seen as a barometer of democratic health. Where the press thrives, government accountability is usually higher. So I want you to think about this. Do you think that's working right now? So I want to circle back to something I mentioned just a little bit ago, which are two of the biggest modern challenges: misinformation and disinformation. What's the difference? Because it seems sometimes that these words are used interchangeably. Misinformation and disinformation both involve the spread of false or inaccurate information, but they differ primarily in intent. Misinformation refers to false or inaccurate information shared without the intent to deceive. Individuals spreading misinformation believe the information to be true, but are mistaken. Examples include unintentional errors such as incorrect dates, statistics, or translations. Disinformation is false information deliberately created and disseminated with the intent to mislead or deceive others. This includes tactics like hoaxes, propaganda, or malicious content designed to harm or manipulate public opinion. Understanding this distinction is crucial, especially right now when information digitally spreads so rapidly. Recognizing whether false information is shared innocently or with malicious intent can help in developing appropriate responses and strategies to address and mitigate its impact. These misinformation and disinformation campaigns, sometimes government-sponsored, have eroded public trust in the media and contribute to widespread polarization. Media consolidation has become another huge challenge by placing large pieces of the news industry under the control of a few corporations, raising a ton of concerns about reduced editorial independence, homogenized perspectives, and profit-driven priorities, just to name a few. And finally, journalists are increasingly facing threats, harassment, and even violence, both online and in real life. According to Reporters Without Borders, hundreds of journalists are imprisoned or killed annually, especially in countries with authoritarian regimes. The war in the Ukraine has showcased both the bravery and peril faced by journalists reporting from conflict zones. International correspondents have risked their lives to document the human toll of the invasion, while local journalists provide essential perspectives often ignored by global outlets. In Iran, journalists have been jailed or exiled for covering protests, particularly those led by women. The suppression of press coverage in these contexts underscores the essential role of journalism in bearing witness and amplifying unheard voices. In the US, political divisions have fueled growing hostility toward journalists, where rhetoric labeling reporters as, quote, enemies of the people contribute to a dangerous environment. So, at a time when it is so needed, independent journalists and citizen reporters have filled the gaps left by traditional newsrooms, especially in underrepresented or underserved communities. Platforms like Substack, Patreon, and YouTube allow journalists to build direct relationships with their audience, though they also face challenges around financial sustainability and fact checking. Citizen journalism, such as live streams during protests or on the ground footage during natural disasters, has democratized news production, although it also requires audiences to carefully assess credibility. Do you see in both of these examples how necessary it is to hone your critical thinking skills? So, what is the impact of social media algorithms on journalism? Algorithms determine what content users see, shaping public perception and potentially reinforcing echo chambers or mis or disinformation. Social media companies have become the gatekeepers of information, deciding what gets promoted, labeled, or taken down, a role that was previously held by editors. Can you see how this might be a major free speech issue or censorship problem? Efforts to address these challenges include algorithmic transparency, regulations on digital monopolies, and public funding for independent journalism. Right now, it feels like these efforts are being trampled on by the billionaires that fund social media and some of the traditional media. But it doesn't mean that we quit. We keep at it. We keep educating others, keep fighting, keep using our voices. Finally, I want to take a look at the political and social implications of a free press. A free press is foundational to a healthy democracy. When the press is undermined, censored, or attacked, it becomes harder for the public to hold institutions accountable. Rhetoric that discredits journalists, such as labeling the media as, quote, fake news or, quote, enemies of the people, can lead to violence, self-censorship, and erosion of trust in factual reporting, in the truth. Authoritarian governments often begin their rise to power by curbing press freedom, controlling narratives, and criminalizing dissent. Remember, they use fear to control. In democratic societies, even subtle erosion, such as lawsuits intended to drain media outlets' resources or laws limiting access to public information, can have a chilling effect. Social media has revolutionized the way people consume news and engage in public conversation, giving individuals platforms to express opinions and mobilize movements. However, algorithms tend to prioritize engagement, often favoring sensationalism, outrage, or mis and disinformation over fact-based reporting. Echo chambers and filter bubbles can reinforce existing beliefs and isolate users from diverse perspectives, deepening social and political divides. Social media platforms also lack consistent standards across countries, making it difficult to regulate hate speech and misinformation and disinformation without infringing on free expression. Organizations like Reporters Without Borders publish annual press freedom indexes, ranking countries based on legal protections, journalist safety, media pluralism, and independence. In nations such as Norway and Finland, press freedom is highly protected, with strong public trust and institutional support for journalism. In contrast, countries like China, North Korea, and Iran impose strict censorship and surveillance, routinely imprisoning journalists who report unfavorably on the government. Even in countries considered democratic, press freedom can decline due to political pressure, judicial harassment, or economic manipulation. Local journalism has been decimated by economic pressures and digital disruption, resulting in news deserts where residents have little access to credible local reporting. When local newsrooms disappear, communities lose watchdogs that monitor city councils, school boards, and local law enforcement. They then rely more on social media for news, which can be riddled with mis and disinformation. Studies show that areas without robust local media have lower civic engagement, higher political polarization, and increased corruption. Revitalizing local journalism through nonprofit models, public funding, or community-supported initiatives is crucial to ensure all people, all Americans have access to accurate information, news opportunities to learn. So, how can people become more discerning consumers of news? Like we talked about a little bit earlier, media literacy education equips people to analyze, evaluate, and create media content thoughtfully and responsibly, teaching individuals, especially students, how to identify credible sources, understand bias, and distinguish opinion from fact can foster resilience against mis and disinformation. Encouraging a habit of cross-checking sources, supporting quality journalism, and engaging in respectful dialogue helps nurture a more informed and empathetic public. Initiatives such as fact-checking organizations, public service announcements, and partnerships between media and educators are growing strategies in the fight for truth. Political polarization often leads audiences to seek news that confirms their beliefs and to dismiss outlets with opposing views as just untrustworthy. Accusations of bias can discourage nuanced reporting or force journalists to overcorrect or appear, quote, neutral, even when truth-telling demands clarity. Efforts to rebuild trust include transparency about sourcing and funding, diversifying newsroom voices, and engaging communities in how stories are told. Journalists must navigate the delicate task of remaining independent and factual while being responsive to the needs and concerns of a fragmented audience. So I know that I threw so much at you. When I started writing and researching this episode, I thought I would keep it short and simple, but the more I got into it, the more I wanted to share with you. And what it really boils down to is this: three things. One, a free press is essential to democracy. The press serves as a vital check on government power, holding leaders accountable and informing the public. Undermining or censoring the media weakens democratic institutions and enables authoritarianism. Two, modern challenges threaten the integrity of journalism. Misinformation, disinformation, media consolidation, and targeted threats against journalists, combined with social media algorithms that amplify sensationalism, pose serious risks to public trust, media independence, and informed discourse. And three, media literacy and local journalism are crucial to civic health. As local news declines and polarization increases, promoting media literacy and reviving community-focused reporting are key to sustaining civic engagement, key to combating misinformation and disinformation, and key to fostering a more informed and connected society. If this episode sparked something in you, take the next step. Support local journalism. Question what you read. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Let's protect the truth together. Your voice and your choices matter. I have an exciting announcement coming next week. So until then, take care of yourself and take care of each other.